Good evening. It's now 6:30 and I call this regular meeting of the Victoria City Council to order. First off, today marks the 22 years since the 9/11 terror attacks. We invite you to stand and join us for a moment of silence as we remember and honor the victims of September 11th. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda this evening is announcements. All meetings of the City Council are open to the public and held in the council chambers at City Hall unless otherwise noted. If you're interested in speaking at a council meeting, we encourage you to contact our city clerk for more information. The next City Council workshop is scheduled for October 18th. This workshop is on a Wednesday and will be held from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the Victoria Recreation Center. The workshop will focus on Victoria's overall park systems, including parks, trails, and the Victoria Recreation Center. The council will also hold a workshop on October 23rd to discuss legislative priorities for the upcoming legislative session in 2024. In other announcements, the Victoria Fire Department will be hosting an open house on September 18th at 6 p.m. There will be a number of interactive activities for youth and adults. The open house will be held at the Victoria Fire Station in downtown Victoria. The city is also hosting a blood drive with the American Red Cross on Tuesday, September 19th from noon until 6 p.m. at the Victoria Recreation Center in the gymnasium. There are no proclamations this evening, so our next order of business is to adopt the final agenda. Council, can I get a motion?
Motion to adopt the final agenda.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to our next item, which is open forum. This is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda and not in application form that will be coming to the council at a future date. Please don't expect action from the council this evening regarding your comments. They may ask clarifying questions, but open forum is not intended to be a back and forth discussion. No one has registered to speak in advance this evening, but is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council? Seeing none, we will move on to our next item, which is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine, administrative, and do not require deliberation, or are housekeeping items that are required by law. They're approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, does staff wish to pull any consent agenda items for separate discussion and vote?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Is there anyone on the council that wishes to pull anything from the consent agenda? How about anyone in the audience? Seeing none, council may have a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt consent agenda.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now moving on to our regular agenda. The first item on our agenda is 6.1, the presentation of the preliminary or maximum tax levy and general fund budget for 2024. Presenting this evening is Assistant City Manager and Finance Director Tricia Pollock. Ms. Pollock, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight is our adoption of the max tax levy. Just a quick look back at our August workshop. We discussed fees and charges and any changes in the Southwest Transit Service options, composting, and the Park Master Plan. And the only item that changed impacting the max tax budget is the Southwest Transit Service option that is reducing the levy by $13,000. So looking at the general fund budget, it includes $1.6 million in transfers to the capital funds, and the operating expenditures come in at $6.7 million. So to achieve a balanced budget and maintain a fund balance of 30% of the following year's operating expenditures at year end, $8.3 million in revenues are needed, and a $58,000 decrease in assigned fund balance. So looking at the general fund balance or budget in more detail, on the revenue side, we have $7.1 million in taxes and franchise fee revenues. And just a reminder, those franchise fees are for cable, not electric and gas, which go through the franchise fee capital fund that we reviewed at the last workshop. And then the remaining $1 million comes from licenses and permits, charges for services, and other revenues. The operating expenditure breakdown is the general government at about $2.7 million, public safety at just under $2 million, public works and parks and rec at just over $1 million each, and then the capital fund transfers at 1.6. So after making the recommended change, the max tax levy will be 11.99% higher than the 2023 levy, and that's compared to 12.2% at our last meeting. So the change to the Southwest Transit reduced it by 0.21%. Our tax capacity is at 29.08%, which is 1.71% higher than 2023. And the breakdown of the $8.3 million levy is 1.2 of debt service and a little over $7 million of the general fund. The net tax capacity is 5.9% higher than in 2023, and the median home value is 2.3% higher at $559,700. So the tax on that median valued home would be $1,628, or an 8.7% increase. We are typically estimating a 3.3% population increase, and then $678 tax per capita. When we look at our long-term financial plan, the 10-year plan through 2023 shows projections of a tax capacity rate at approximately 29% to 34% each year. And that would maintain that 30% general fund unassigned fund balance. We're looking at household numbers to increase from 4,007 households in 2024 to 4,787 in 2033, and a population increase from just over 12,000 to about 14,500. Does council have any questions or comments for staff on the max tax?
Council, questions? Yes, Councilmember Gunderson,
I just
please.
need a clarification. Questions came from the community regarding Southwest Transit. Because we're not subsidizing those rides anymore, does that mean that that program is not available at all? We can't have public transportation come out here, or is it we're just ending the public subsidy?
It's just that route. So there's the two routes, the airport route and then the edge, which would be like the Mall of America and the Mystic Lake area. So those routes would be eliminated. Now people could still go to those destinations, but they would have to take a ride to, like, say, the Chaska Transit Center, where then they would buy a ticket at the kiosk to go to those places. So they wouldn't be able to call Southwest Prime to get a ride to the airport, and even without the subsidy, it wouldn't be offered. But they could connect at a different location.
And after going through the numbers of the rides, the only one that I'm concerned about, and this is is the casino. And the reason I'm concerned about the casino is because if you look at the number of rides, it equates to one person going to work and coming back. And that's what we got feedback. It was one person using it to go to work and come back. So I'm concerned that albeit I understand it's one person, but it's not the initial, it's the casino. It's not, we're going to gamble, it's I'm going to work. and coming back. It's not a whole bunch of rides to go gamble.
So that route wouldn't just go to just the casino, it goes to other areas.
Oh, I got that. But when we were told that a resident was using it for work to go to the casino, and you actually dig into what the number is and the number of rides, it equates out to one person going to work and coming back from work using that particular route. So my opinion on that particular route has changed because of being able to look into it a little deeper and actually having the numbers after the last meeting of who's riding and how they're riding and how they're utilizing it. We're not subsidizing rides to go gamble. We're subsidizing rides to go to work.
So one of the things that we could do this evening is to increase the max tax back that $13,000 to determine, and then have further discussion about whether we want that included or not.
I think it warrants at least that
Okay, so
deeper
Council-
conversation.
Well, because right now the option would be that individual would have to go to Chaska to get to work.
And
Right.
We're extending, so we don't know if they're already using that from the doorstep. Is that how the project is, from their doorstep?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so it's from their doorstep to work and back again. So now we're sending them to somewhere else. So at least the longer conversation it deserves at least a longer conversation. I'm still not convinced, going to Mall of America and the airport and some of the other stuff, that we should be subsidizing some of that stuff. But on this particular instance, when the information came back that said there was one individual using it for work purposes, and we don't have the public transportation for a workforce, and this is kind of what those programs are used for. And that's why we have them.
Councilmember Roberts.
So what would the split look like, right? So you said it's either, right, so it's the airport, that's one, and then did you say the Mall of America and the casino are in the outer,
Yeah.
whatever, and other places potentially too? So I guess if
Yeah.
you just took out the air, right, like what would the different, like if we,
I would say it's about a 60-40 split, with 60% of that 13,000 being airport rides and 40% being the edge. And there is more than one person riding there, because it was like 280 rides in 7 months. So I know it couldn't be just one person.
It broke down to like 34 rides a month. And it broke down to the rides too, which is about 18. And if they're not working full-time, you split that in half to and from. From what I could tell, it equated to about one person going back and forth between the casino.
Yeah.
Based on the number.
Yeah, and I understand, the interest in helping support people who need supportive services to get to work and those kinds of things, but I know staff was kind of trying to find some other solution.
And we haven't heard anything. So if we have to cut it out, we have to cut it out. I get it. If we choose it, but I think it warrants a longer conversation. I don't want to axe it right now and say, well, we should have had a longer conversation. I don't want to leave a woulda, shoulda, coulda on the.
So council, I think the request by Councilmember Gunderson before us then is to increase the max tax $13,000 while we sort through the other options and further discuss that. Is that what I'm understanding?
We can leave out, if we can get the exact cost for the airport, we can cut that one.
yeah, could you do like half, since you said it's 60-40?
if we do 65.
50 per, right? Like, and so then
Okay, so
you
cut
make
the
sure
max
that
tax down?
it's there for the 40%-ish.
Yeah, I have no questions about the airport. That's,
Yeah.
what I do about this particular route.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Okay, I'm seeing consensus here. So.
I can do that, but I don't have a resolution for you to approve tonight then. Because the resolution is,
Yeah.
Direction.
Yeah, Ms. Hardy, please.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. What we could do is adopt the resolution, and then if you just trust our mathematics, we can add that actual number back in there and just get that taken care of, and then we can certify that resolution to, we can follow up with a note on what it was going to be, but for that actual number. But I think we got clear direction, if you're comfortable with us actually inputting the real percentage number in there.
Attorney Vos, is that acceptable?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I would say you should make a motion to adopt it with an amended language, revised language, so the maker of the motion can just say exactly what you want added to the resolution, and then staff can do that.
Okay, very good. Other comments on max tax? Discussion. All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion or a resolution approving a preliminary tax levy for the city of Victoria for collection in 2024 in the amount of $8,254,035 with the understanding that it'll be added onto based on actual public transportation dollars of a prime route already established in Victoria.
All right, very good. We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we need to do a second resolution approving the preliminary 2024 budget?
Yes, please, Mayor.
All right, I will entertain a motion, please.
Resolution approving a preliminary 2024 budget for the general fund.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is 6.2, which is adoption of a resolution awarding the sale of Series 2023A bonds. Presenting this evening again, we'll have Assistant City Manager and Finance Director Tricia Pollock, along with our financial advisor from Northland, Ms. Tammy Amdahl. Ladies, the floor is yours. Tricia, are you going to kick us off here?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I am just going to pass it over to Tammy to present the results of the sale of the bonds.
Wonderful. Welcome, Ms. Amdahl. Welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Tammy Amdahl with Northland Securities, serving as advisor to the city on the sale of the 2023 A bonds. We did take bids this morning. The sale went very well. Before I get into that, I just want to cover a few items. The bonds are being issued to finance street and utility improvements. The city has been preparing for this issuance for a number of months, and the bonds have been structured over a 15-year term. And net revenues of the sewer fund, the water fund, tax levies, and special assessment revenues will be used to repay these bonds. I would also note that prior to going out for bid on the sale of these bonds, the city staff did go through a process with a rating review with respect to the city's rating. And the AAA rating was affirmed by Standard & Poor's, S&P Global. So that reflects the city's strength of your financial management, budgeting practices, and you just went through that in your prior agenda. There were 6 bids received this morning. The low bid was from Piper Sandler from Minneapolis. And the final bid and the par amount, which is different than your resolution. It always works this way with bonds because bids are received the morning of your meeting. The final principal amount of the bonds to be issued is $3,650,000. The original amount was $3,890,000, and that is the amount that is in your agenda. The reason for that difference in this market, and for a number of years, these bonds were bid with premium. In the case of Victoria, that premium wasn't needed for other purposes, and it was used to reduce the principal amount of the bonds. Bonds are bid that way because underwriters bid with higher coupons or rates, so the interest amount paid is more over the term, but the principal amount would be less, so the net effect is zero to the city. So it was great bids, and that brings me to the rate. The final rate, true interest cost, which was used to evaluate the bids, is 3.72%. When the plan was put together a few months ago in preparation, the estimated rate at that time was 3.9%. So this will be a little bit of help to the city's budget with respect to that lower rate. With that, Madam Mayor, council members, happy to answer any questions. There was a lot of information, including a lengthy resolution included in your packet, and there may have been a new resolution distributed this afternoon. Either way, the final amount in that motion is $3,650,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Amdahl. That is great news. Council, questions, comments? All right, seeing nothing, I will entertain a motion. Do we have a motion available? Let me,
It's in the packet. I can do it.
all right.
Motion to approve a resolution awarding the sale of $3,650,000, I believe, right? General obligation improvement and utility revenue bonds, series 2023A, fixing their form and specifications, directing their execution and delivery, and providing for their payment.
That was a mouthful. We have a mouthful of a motion. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to our next item, 6.3 is a public hearing for the final plat, PUD, and easement and right-of-way for vacation of Rowan's Lands, which is the Roars project. I think that's the first time I've heard that name. Rowan's Lands in downtown Victoria. Presenting this evening is our consulting city planner, Nathan First. Welcome, Mr. First.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, Rowan's Lands is that would be the first time you've heard that. That is the name of the plat. So that's what it's officially going to be on file with the county as if you approve it. So we're looking at a final plat, PUD, and easement and right-of-way vacation requested by Roars Companies. Yep, just summarized that on this slide, so I'll move on. So the subdivision process, you're kind of at that last stage in terms of entitlements, or near the last stage, which is the final plat review, where we're really finalizing all the details, development agreement, etc. As a reminder, the planned unit development process does allow for some flexibility. Again, we are at the last part of that process as well. So a little bit, just as a refresher on the project, we're looking at an aggregation of 7 existing parcels plus some unused right-of-way, totaling just over 2.5 acres at 2.6 acres. And the proposed uses here are the same as they were during the preliminary plat in June, which is 125 apartment units, 8,700 square feet of commercial space, and 258 parking stalls. So the existing conditions, everyone's very familiar with. We have some pretty significant grade change on the site when you go down to that regional trail. You have some existing wooded areas, some existing structures on the property, and notably environmental remediation of some of those buildings is required, and the developer is working on that. So as the city determined during the preliminary plat review, this use is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the uses for this site. And specifically, the density is also consistent with the comp plan at 47.3 units per acre. So as a little bit of a background for this whole process, it started in January of this year with sketch plat review through the Planning Commission and City Council, followed in June with a preliminary plat and PUD review. Public hearing was held for the PUD at that time. And here is on the screen, this is the final submittal from the developers team. Not really a lot has changed on the plans from preliminary plat to final plat, which is a good thing. The city has gotten essentially what it has approved. So on the screen, you can see the preliminary plat approved in June, and here on the screen is the final plat. Lots of lines on this Rowan's Lands plat. The legal description is like 2 pages long. It's a big one. A lot of complications on the property, but I think we're pretty much sorted out. So the site plan is on the screen now for this development. Again, really not much has changed. A crosswalk notably has been added across Rose Street at Steiger Lake Lane, which was requested or required by the city during the preliminary approval. Here's the landscaping plan showing landscaping implemented around the site, meeting the city's requirements. So when we get a final plat request, zoning and planning and zoning, we're reviewing the land use and the density, the design, the site plan, and the landscaping. So we've talked about the land use. The design here, again, is what the city was expecting from the preliminary approval. So you can see the 2 main facades that will be visible from Arboretum Boulevard and Rose Street. And then some of the other facades of the building that are visible either on the site or in the other vantages around it. And lastly, a little bit more about the materials, which notably do meet the city's standards. Okay, and then the design plan here, the master sign plan was reviewed against the city code. There are two deviations to signage, which again were reviewed during the preliminary plat process. So here's a tree removals plan. I would note that the developer was required to revise and resubmit the tree removals to show all of the trees, even including in those unvacated rights-of-way areas. And so we have that. We've seen the revised tree mitigation plan and recalculated the replacement required for tree removal. So we have that, which will be articulated in the development agreement. So lastly, a summary of all of the deviations that are requested by the developer for this proposal. All of these deviations were anticipated in the preliminary plat review process. So we've been able to check all of them against that approval. So this request comes with the request to vacate 3 existing areas of right-of-way and 2 easement areas on the site. This is shown here on this exhibit, which was provided by the developer. The solid color areas are those areas which will be that are either currently right-of-way or easements, which would be vacated. They're no longer needed for public right-of-way or easements because of what's being proposed for the site. So that is the reason to vacate those areas. And I would note that new easements will be part of this plat, so the city will have those drainage and utility easements that are required to make sure that the site functions. And lastly, you can see on this exhibit also that the developer will be providing right-of-way to the city and MnDOT as part of this plat. Okay, so the city engineer had an opportunity to review, along with the Public Works team. A number of comments are found in the engineer's memo, which is attached to the staff report. Phasing plan for Rose Street reconstruction is required. Some other comments include streetscaping improvements, water main realignment, and more information on storm sewer. Parkland dedication, this was mentioned during the preliminary plat review. Staff is suggesting a cash in lieu fee given the proximity of this site to existing park facilities. Staff, both internally and externally, have had an opportunity to review. Notably, the DNR did not have any comments on this request. One thing that staff have been working on with the developer since the preliminary plat process is a construction management plan to help mitigate the impacts during the construction period. There are a number of things we've talked about with the developer. These include the working hours for work on site, haul routes for materials to and from the site, construction worker parking, project timeline generally, and specifically as it relates to the construction of Rose Street and the phasing of that. Crane locations and their swing radii, which is pretty kind of niche construction thing. And then lastly, temporary right-of-way impacts. So given that the plans appear to meet the approval of the preliminary plat, staff are recommending approval. And so if the city council does approve the final plat PUD requests, we would suggest that you do so with conditions, and they're found in the staff report. And I can go into more detail if you'd like. And lastly, we will need 4 actions from you this evening. They're shown on the screen now.
All right, and my understanding is we are also having a public hearing this evening.
Thank you. Yep, that is for the easement and right-of-way vacations.
All right, very good. So for the easement and right-of-way vacations, I will now open the public hearing. If there is anyone who wishes to speak to this item, please approach the podium. Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? And one more time. All right, seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing. Council, any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, let's work our way through these motions. I will entertain a motion, please.
Motion to adopt a resolution approving the final plat and PUD requested by Roars Companies for Rowan's Lands with the conditions and findings as proposed therein.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt ordinance 464ZC establishing the PUD standards for Rowan's lands.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I will entertain a third motion.
Motion to adopt resolution approving easement and right-of-way vacations for area associated with Rowan's lands plat.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And a fourth and final motion, please.
Motion to adopt a resolution authorizing summary publication of ordinance 464ZC.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, our next item, 6.4, is the TIF agreement for the TIF District 1.1-9. Presenting this evening is Community and Economic Development Director Jen Brewington, along with the city's financial advisor, Tammy Amdahl. Ms. Brewington, are you kicking us off this evening? Please, welcome.
Thank you. All right, we're here to discuss our tax increment financing agreement district for District 1-9. So on July 24th this year, a public hearing was held and the City Council adopted a resolution approving the establishment of the tax increment financing district number 1-9. City staff proposed providing TIF assistance to facilitate the redevelopment of a 2.6 acre, site for the construction of a 125-unit market rate apartment building, approximately 8,700 square feet of commercial and retail space, and a combined number of 258 parking spaces. The TIF will be used for the public development costs such as land acquisition and site improvement costs for the project. And staff believes that the proposal is in line with the downtown master plan, the 2040 comprehensive plan, and meets the City Council's strategic goals for the site. The estimated average annual tax increment from the project is approximately $330,000 over the life of the district. The developer will receive 97% of the increment for reimbursement of up to $3.23 million of development costs, with the interest based on the maximum terms of 15 years. And the city will receive 3% of the increment of reimbursed administration costs, and after the developer reimbursement term ends, the city will receive 100% of the increment for the reimbursement of the admin costs and public improvement costs. This agreement is in conformance with the development objectives set forth in the TIF plan. The developer will obtain all required permits, licenses, and approvals through the local, state, and federal requirements and laws. The total development cost shall be paid by the developer, and the city shall reimburse the developer for the public development cost in the reimbursement amount solely through the issuance of a TIF note. And then the developer and the city agrees to execute an assessment agreement, and the project will be constructed by the developer on the development property in conformity with the construction plans that are approved by the city. So with that, I have a sample motion for you, and Tammy is also here if you have any other questions.
All right. Council, discussion on this item? Questions? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt tax increment financing agreement for District 1-9.
I have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, 6.5, is a public hearing for a cannabis interim ordinance and summary publication. Again, presenting this evening is Ms. Brewington, please.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Council. So on July 10th, the City Council heard a brief overview of the legalization of the adult use recreational cannabis bill 73-57 that was passed by the state of Minnesota. City Council then directed city staff to draft an interim cannabis ordinance that will remain in effect until January 1st of 2025. And city staff will conduct a comprehensive study to deliberate on the adoption or modification of reasonable restrictions concerning the timing, location, and operational practices of cannabis businesses within the city. And that is required by state statute, and staff will work on that as soon as this is adopted, if it is approved. And I have a sample motion for you, and I can answer any questions.
Council, questions on this?
Do we have any consider, so,
Councilmember Roberts.
okay, so my understanding, right, is that we're basically putting this off, right? So is there any, we've heard of some concerns, at least from a couple residents about smoking in public places. Is there anything, if we wanted to make sure that's done right now?
Yeah, so within that study, Councilmember Roberts, what we entail is looking at our zoning, where we could put these businesses. There's different types of businesses, obviously, that are categorized under this. But I foresee that we would be studying the public use part of that. And I know that the county right now is actually having those same discussions. So we're kind of waiting to see what direction they take to give us some direction. And we are working with our market cities as well to figure out what's the best for Victoria. So that will be included in some of those studies.
In reality, right, like even if we had it, it's not like there are police all over, right? Like, the odds of us actually, enforcing that rule is pretty slim anyways, right? So it's not, yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Roberts, you're correct. The enforcement piece is something we still need to figure out as well, which staff is reviewing right now with our attorney as well.
So I'm sorry, Councilmember Roberts, can we talk a little bit about the county's authority and the city's authority? So I know there is some conversation happening at Carver County. Is that conversation in relation to how the sheriff's department's going to enforce? Is that what that's all about? Ms. Hardy,
Thank you, Mayor.
shed some light for us?
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, I don't know if I can speak to authority. I might have to look at our city attorney for that, but I can provide a little bit additional context for you all that might help frame things better for you. So what we're bringing to you tonight is what you directed us earlier this summer, which only deals with kind of the zoning, where these the retail shops could go, the licensing piece, and that you had a pretty lengthy discussion on and directed us to bring. That's this ordinance, and that speaks to this. There is potentially a second ordinance that we would be looking at. It could come in the form of an ordinance. It could come in the form of policy or procedures or all of the above. That's what we're going to be studying and working through along with other counties and cities within the state. So recently, within the last several weeks, the county board did take up a discussion on this during a county board meeting. We did have staff attend that. And listen to the discussion, and we had some follow-up conversations with several of our commissioners just to get additional perspective on things. The focus is just on what Councilmember Roberts has suggested, is on the public use. One of the things that the county had quite a lengthy discussion on, and I'll look to Jen to correct me if I'm incorrect, because she was at the meeting, she and Alyssa attended, was whether there's some value, and they landed on, they think there is some value in having some consistent use in public spaces throughout the county. So if you think about, if you're in Carver and then you go to Cologne and then you come to Victoria, if every community had a different use for, you can use cannabis, smoke cannabis, or have edibles in public spaces in one community but not another, it could create some confusion. And so I think they wanted to flesh that out a little bit better. The county board ultimately ended up directing the county administrator to have some follow-up conversations with the cities and get a sense of what people are thinking. Is there an opportunity for the county kind of to take the lead here? Would people want that? And so there's some additional conversations that are going to be happening in the coming weeks and months, so the county can make a better informed decision about that public use, with the goal, I think the goal of having some consistent, if not one language or one framework ordinance that we can all communities adopt, where it would either cover everybody, or we can use similar language and adopt that in each of our communities. And so our intent was to bring separate discussions to start kind of coming up with a framework of an ordinance this month, September, with our recreation, Parks and Recreation Committee and Planning Commission Committee. As you know, they do the heavy lifting for you all on these ordinances. After that discussion with the county board, and they're going to have a follow-up discussion, we decided it would be best to hold off, let the county board have their second or their follow-up conversation, get a sense of the direction that they're going, and then bring that conversation to our planning commission and the Park and Rec committee. And then from there, our plan was to start developing that framework and bring something back to you, either in the form of a policy, procedure, or ordinance, or all or any of the above.
So one of the other questions that I had was, there was some conversation about, to Councilmember Roberts' point, smoking in public. And so we already have an ordinance in place that does not allow smoking in public parks and public space. We don't have that ordinance in place. Okay. So this time could be used to draft that language as well.
Mayor, members of the council, just yes. And there are some discussions in neighboring communities that are having that same dialogue and that same conversation, that they're taking that as an opportunity as they move forward to think through, do they want to apply kind of, if you just take that Clean Air Act rule and apply that more broadly and button things up. And so I think our neighboring communities are having very similar discussions. So you're tracking with where everybody else is at.
Okay, so this action tonight actually kind of puts a pin in it, a moratorium from anybody starting a business here until we can sort this all out, is basically the utility of this ordinance this evening. All right, council, questions? Councilmember Gunderson.
My question surrounds the one business opportunity that we have. Going through this with a business in the community that is already established, I think would be a good opportunity to see how the state goes, because we may be seeing something different than they see, and be paying attention to different channels than they're paying attention to. I'm not convinced that allowing it all over the place is a good thing, but I'm not convinced not allowing that one business to go down this. And the reason I'm convinced of this is that the business I'm talking about has been here for coming up on 10 years, at least 9, and has expressed an interest in selling products in this line. And I think it would be a good community partner to have, to see how we go through this licensing for other businesses when it comes to such time that we can hold that in the market. I don't want to limit an established business's potential should this ramp up faster. I understand that the rollout was less than optimal, to say the best. But I think we might be doing ourselves a disservice and a local business a disservice by not allowing them and us to go down this licensing path together. I don't want to put up a situation where we've put up a barrier to that business to not be able to go down that path.
But we can't do anything until the state actually starts licensing, right? Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, I don't want to step on the toes of Jen or Dana, because they both said everything exactly right. So I don't want to, everything they've said is exactly right. As to your question, which is really a different question about this limitation based on population, cities can't, no city can prohibit at least one licensed business from being allowed in a given city. However, and this is where I muddle things, a county with a sufficiently small population, the county itself can establish a limit on the number of licenses within the entire county. And the effect of that could be to limit the number of licenses countywide to less than 1 per incorporated city in the county, right? A given county may have a small enough population that they only have 3 licenses that have to be issued countywide. And that's the county's position, is we're going to maximally restrict it. And that effect may be that there may not be one per city. I don't think that's the case in Carver County based on population, but in theory that could happen. So, but to your point, you will be, if you approve the moratorium, not allowing the establishment of full strength pot, as I've talked to you in the past about it, full strength and 3-2. You'll be not allowing the establishment of those businesses until after January of 2025. But that is really not, to your point, not significant because the state isn't going to start licensing itself until probably around that time. So you're not going to be restricting any existing business from getting a license in Victoria, or at least not meaningfully restricting any business from getting a license.
Didn't you say previously, though, at our last meeting that we can take away the moratorium, right? So if this happens quick, like if it happens before January 2025, right, that we can remove that so that we can get going right away.
Yeah, and Mayor and Council, the question I've heard in a number of other cities that you haven't asked, but you've teased around it a little bit is, would you, by adopting the moratorium tonight, would you be preventing yourself from either doing what you just said, Council Member, repealing the moratorium and proceeding with licensing? The answer is no, you could do that, and that's what we've said in the past. The other thing you can do is what Dana said, what staff has said. If in the midst of the moratorium, should you adopt it, if in the midst of that you decide you don't want to allow public consumption of marijuana products, you could still adopt a restriction on that during your moratorium. And if that's what the county, it sounds like the county is coordinating efforts among the cities, which makes all the sense in the world, by the way. If the county comes out in 4 months with a proposed policy that says we're not going to allow, we encourage all of the cities in Carver County not to allow smoking of pot in public places, you could follow suit in Victoria and adopt that, an ordinance that does that along with the other cities in Carver County. So you're not tying your hands at all about what you want to do. You're just saying we're not going to allow new businesses to pop up that sell marijuana products until we know what the rules are and until we decide what we want our rules to be.
Okay.
Is your concern, Derek, just that how quickly can we get up to speed so that he's not at a disadvantage is what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Right. I don't want a Victoria business being put at a disadvantage for something we decided we were going to do.
Sure.
Right. And so that's my only concern in this whole thing. I totally on board with everything else we've been talking about. It's just this whole conversation, even going back to our last meetings, have been, are we putting a Victoria business at a disadvantage compared to other communities in our county and then in the metro, which is what we're considered to be a part of too.
But it sounds like staff is saying we can get this done quick, where if we find out it's happening next week, right, we know it's not, but like that we could
Lift the moratorium.
right, we could get it done quick.
Yeah, and Mayor and Council, just to remind you, because you'll hear about this again, to me, I won't speak for staff, but to me, the most important piece of information that you don't have right now that you're going to get, we hope soon, is once this state agency that's going to be licensing marijuana products is up and running, fully up and running, one of their first tasks is going to be to produce a model ordinance for cities to look at. And obviously, every city in the state that cares about this is going to look at that model first. Cities may move away from it, but that's going to be the model that gets adopted in a lot of cities. So it makes a lot of sense, it seems to me, to look to what most cities are going to start from, what basic policy the state is going to encourage cities to have, and then work off of that. And that could be out, summer of next year. So you may have all the information you need that staff needs at that point to lift the moratorium and proceed with licensing.
And who knows, maybe as soon as 420.
Funny.
Do we, another quick question is, since we're kind of low on the totem pole, right, that's the bottom, does the county get, or do they have people that get more information from the state, like where things are at, and does that trickle down to us at all, really, or no? Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, not surprised. Okay.
Okay.
Other discussion, comments? Thank you for your good work on this. This is, this is building the ship as it's sailing, for sure. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt interim cannabis ordinance and summary of publication. Do we need to add anything about the public space?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We're not having a public hearing
Public
about this.
hearing.
Yeah, no, Mayor and Council, I think Counselor, you're asking about the public, smoking in public places, and that would have to be a separate ordinance. This moratorium can't address that. That's outside the scope of this, so the motion you just made sounded right to me, so, yeah.
Okay. Will you repeat that motion, please, Derek?
Motion to adopt interim cannabis ordinance and summary of publication.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, public hearing, I thought you were asking about his question. You're right, we have noticed a public hearing for tonight, I believe, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
all right. So at this point, I will open up the public hearing. So if anyone wishes to speak to this item, the interim cannabis ordinance, please step forward.
Carrie, you have thoughts?
Anyone wishing to speak to this item? Seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing. And I'm going to ask Councilmember Gunderson one more time to please patiently repeat his motion.
Motion to adopt interim cannabis ordinance and summary of publication.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. With that, there are no more items on our agenda this evening, so we will we'll take a look at reports and emerging issues. So Attorney Vos, anything from you this evening?
Thank you, Mayor, no.
Ms. Hardy, anything from staff?
Nothing from me personally, but I am going to ask Claudia just to make a note about the artwork.
Oh, terrific. Claudia, please tell us.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, as our ongoing collaboration with Deb Zeller, we do have new art display, and it is the State Fair theme provided by Deb Zeller and Tim Clark. And I would say that the winner of the People's Choice Award is In Search of the Perfect Hot Dog.
Very good. It's great artwork, and just a reminder that the artwork is available, and we encourage the public to come and view the art during open hours at City Hall. Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Edisfold. All right, council, anything from council this evening?
On a happy note, we kind of somberly started our meeting. Just want to wish my parents happy 47th wedding anniversary today.
Congratulations to the Gundersons. Happy birthday to Councilmember Roberts yesterday.
Thank you.
All right, there are no more items to come before the body this evening. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.